I always get so excited when I'm joined by Michael Lombardi because not only is he an insider, but he's a very busy man and has so many interests. I subscribe to the daily newsletter, The Daily Coach. I love that. The GM Shuffle podcast is a hit and gaining traction with the day. It's every day that goes by, it seems. And also I was seeing on your Twitter feed, Gridiron Genius. Tell me a little bit about this book, because I know it was released in 2019, but I haven't picked it up yet. What's it about?
Well, it's really, I'm not the Gridiron Genius. It's really about my paying homage to two of the greatest coaches, I think, in the history of the game, Coach Walsh and Coach Belichick, and what the lessons I've learned over my career from them, and the ability to then write those lessons down for young coaches in any sport. This book is a culture book that would benefit the women's volleyball coach at high school, the Pee Wee coach in Little League or whatever. It's a book that helps coaches grow and develop, and it's a tribute to Coach Walsh, Coach Belichick, and of course Al Davis, who I learned from. So, I'm the only person in the history of the sport that has been to a Super Bowl with all three of those men, and this is my way of paying homage to them.
One of the things I love about you most, Michael, is you're such a deep thinker. You really get that in the newsletter when you listen to your analysis. And it's a nice place to start, I think, with Gridiron Genius because of the topic du jour every time a regular season comes to an end, which is, the inevitable coaching changes that come with that and how coaches handle that kind of adversity and all the decision making that goes into the process that I think a lot of people are probably unfamiliar with because we all haven't had the luxury like you of being inside it. Let's just start with sort of a blank canvas of were there any surprises for you in terms of who didn't make the cut after the regular season ended?
I definitely, obviously, Brian Flores jumps to mind because I think Brian's an outstanding coach. I think Brian did a really good job of improving his team. One of the things you look for as a general manager is, does your team make improvement during the season? Are you only good in September and then fall apart? Are the problems fixed during the season? Let's take Brendan Staley's Los Angeles Chargers. All throughout the year, they could never fix their defense. All throughout the year, they never got better on third down defense. All throughout the year, they really couldn't contain people from running the football. Those are alarming things. In Miami with Flores, they got better in every phase, offense, defense, and the kicking game, and they overcame that horrible 1-7 start to put themselves in position in Tennessee to potentially make the playoffs, which they fell well short. But to me, that one surprised me. David Culley didn't. Not because he was in his first year, but I think I don't think he was in symmetry to what the Texans want to do moving forward. That was a surprising hire. He had never coordinated a team before. He'd never called plays before. They basically promoted him over 2 grades of where he had been. And I think he probably wasn't ready to be the guy. And I don't think they were patient enough to allow him to grow within the job.
Why do you ultimately think Flores was cut?
I think it's all about, I think he saw it in the owner's press release. He said, I want a more collaborative organization. I want people to get along. I think Brian is going to say what he feels. He's going to be honest. He's going to be opinionated. And that may rub people the wrong way. The NFL is very sensitive. That, people don't like to be talked to or told they're wrong. And I think there's a collection of people in Miami that felt threatened, and they went to the owner and felt like it would be better for the long term if they went back to being a collaborative one. I know people in Miami that are going to say, look, we're not going to find a coach better than Brian Flores out there. Now, we may get along with one better, but we're not going to find one better.
The narrative that we've discussed in the past is a glaring lack of diversity in the head coaching space in the NFL. And I know you have a lot of ideas as to how that should be addressed, why that hasn't been addressed. And now we're talking about it again because you've got a situation where there's only one black head coach in the entirety of the league. And as I, search headlines around the topic all week, I'm seeing a number of different things, but among them is, that it's more difficult to be a black head coach in the NFL, that there's more scrutiny that comes with that it's a no-win game to be a black head coach in the NFL. Are those things true?
I don't think so. I think, but then again, I didn't think Brian Flores would get fired. I think if you win, you should keep your job regardless of the color of your skin. But that obviously proved out to be not the case. So, I wish that, that people didn't have this belief. I wish we could just see people for their ability to coach and not the color of their skin. But I know that's naive. And I know that that's not usually how things go in the league. But, there is 8 openings. I expect them to really fill them with minority coaches. And I hope they do. I hope we have a way to balance this inadequate level. But I think more than anything, for me, Carolyn, I'm more about when the guy gets hired, can he keep his job? Can he maintain the job? 1/3 of the workforce in the NFL gets fired almost every single year, whether you're white or black. That's not a healthy environment. That's not a healthy system to be in. And I think we need to do more for minorities to help them get the job. And I think we need to do more for minorities to train them when they're in the job, just like we need other coaches. We need to do the same for other coaches.
What's been the genesis of this? What have you done for me lately? Oh, you started 1-7, and even though you're able to turn it around, we're still going to let you go. We don't like the decision that you make. Sort of urgency with which some of these organizations make these firing decisions. I mean, I know that it's a high stakes game because there's a lot of money on the line, but are you suggesting a reversal in that approach in terms of like, let's give these guys a little bit more time to develop or recruit or whatever it may be? What's the origin of all of that?
Well, I think you need to have somebody help the coach. I mean, the Eagles are the perfect example. They hired a very young coach who wasn't really, didn't call offensive plays, never been a head coach before, and their organization around him helped him become a better coach. They changed what they did offensively. They changed what they did defensively. I think they rallied their organization to help him become a better coach. I don't think he got there on his own. And I do think there is what I wrote about in Gridiron Genius, what I call the Art Modell theory of firing. Art Modell, the former owner of the Cleveland Browns, who I worked with in Cleveland, went to become the Ravens owner. Wonderful man. But he always believed, he would assess a coach and say, okay, there's 25 things you do really well, but you do 5 things bad. So he fires the coach who does those 5 things really bad, and he replaces them with a coach who does them well. But the new coach he hires only does 10 other things well. So now he's behind. Mm-hmm. And what I would say is let's work on the coach's weaknesses in those 5 areas. If you feel like Brian Flores can't communicate, is not collaborative, then I think the owner needs to come in and try to reinforce that and give that an opportunity, because you're going to lose a lot of great qualities in this man. And I think that's the problem with the NFL. There's not enough willingness to adapt and help the coach change. And I think that is the problem.
This might be a stupid question, but who knows? I'll ask it anyway. I mean, is the influence that ownership has in making these kinds of key personnel decisions something that ultimately gets in the way of making good decisions or giving franchises a little bit of time to to correct issues? In other words, should there be a position that comes over the top for some of these guys to almost help them get out of their own way in terms of making decisions and sticking with certain decisions?
Well, I think there's no doubt there should be, but when you're one of the 32 and you're a multi-billionaire, usually you're not used to somebody telling you what to do. And I think that's really the problem. I mean, I think they're involved. I mean, Stephen Ross is deeply involved with the team. He bought the team. He owns it. He has every right to run it. I mean, how do you tell somebody who puts billions of dollars down to buy something and then they can't run it? It's their toy. They're going to play with it, and they're going to do whatever they take. I often do think that owners listen to too many people. I think their circle of influence should be smaller, and I think there should be more innovative ways to understand who is the best leader. Mike Vrabel's a really good example. Mike Vrabel wasn't a very good defensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. In fact, they ranked in the bottom 1/3 of defense when he was the coordinator there, replacing Romeo Crennel. But when he went to Tennessee, he became a really good head coach. And I think there's a sense that maybe some guys are better head coaches. Vic Fangio's a better coordinator than he is a head coach. And I think that you need to explore that more. This week, Monday for the Daily Coach, I wrote about what we call the 37% rule. The 37% rule is you go out like coaches are doing today. You interview 15 potential candidates. You narrow that list down to 37% of that list. And then once you have those final 37%, you then go out and interview 10 different people to see you've set the standard with the 37%. Now let's see if you can increase the standard. Let's see if you can find somebody better. Most people, when they narrow the list down, they re-interview those same people. I'm suggesting you go out and try to find a different course to see how well you're doing.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach. One other thing I saw I think I saw on your Twitter feed, you were doing an interview and you basically said that there are different reasons for hiring specific head coaches. You can look for an architect, a team designer, that some organizations might need something like that versus a head coach that's, let's say, a great recruiter or an assessor of talent. I mean, how should an organization approach filling a vacancy through that lens with those different needs in mind?
I think really what we need, the head coach today more than ever, is a chief figure-out officer. I think the head coach should have a philosophy on offense, defense, and the kicking game. And he should, as Belichick did in 1991, when he walked into the facility in Cleveland and he handed me a piece of paper. On that piece of paper was his philosophy on offense, defense, and the kicking game. And then we enacted that philosophy based on what he wanted. We didn't rely on who's the coordinator. We didn't rely on who's the running back coach. That was the Belichickian philosophy for the Cleveland Browns moving forward. I think that's really what's missing deeply in the NFL.
Just last point here. What are you hearing about Seattle and Pete Carroll's future there?
You know, I know they had a big meeting yesterday. The way Pete behaved on the sideline of the Arizona game with renewed enthusiasm, with really a lot of excitement, it lended me to think that he's coming back. Now, he just redid his contract at a lot of money. But we know Jody Allen, the owner, the owner from her brother Paul, is certainly has plenty of money to do whatever she wants to do. But I do think they're going to try to reorganize themselves, coaching staff, front office. I don't know how it's all going to play out, but a lot of that has been happening over the last couple of days based on these meetings.
Do you think the 49ers can beat the Cowboys this weekend?
You know, I think that's a game where both teams could win. I think it's one of those. It's the point spread is 3.5. I think if the Niners control the game, if the Niners can control the football for 32, 33 minutes, keep Dak Prescott off the field, that gives them a great chance. If you go back to the Tennessee game when Garoppolo threw the 2 picks, they couldn't stop Tennessee on 3rd and long. And that's what Dallas does really effectively, throw the football down the field. If they can't do that against Tennessee, they're going to struggle against Dallas. That's what concerns me from a 49er standpoint.
And with the Raiders going to Cincinnati, what do you see for the Raiders just forecasting their playoff future?
Well, I think it's going to be challenging. I mean, look, the Raiders won 4 overtime games, so their margin for victory is very, very small. I mean, let's just put this in real perspective. In the COVID weekend that they had to play in Cleveland on Monday night, because the Browns had COVID, not because of them, the Browns faced a 3rd and 3 with about a minute to go in the game. The Raiders had called their last time out. If they convert that 3rd and 3, the Raiders aren't even in this conversation. Mm-hmm. And yet they went on to win 3 more games. They've been operating on a very, very thin margin all year. I think that's hard to duplicate. Plus, Carr playing in cold weather has me concerned.
And just while we're on the topic of head coaches, I mean, what about Rich Bisaccia, the job that he's done kind of stepping into that role? Does he deserve a shot to step out of that interim role, or are they looking elsewhere?
Well, I think they're going to look elsewhere, and I think Rich has done a wonderful job. But I think it's different to go from being the interim to the head coach to that. I think he's been managing the situation, and the difference between a manager and a leader is this: managers do things right, leaders do the right thing, and Rich is doing things right now. And I think to be the leader would be a challenge.
Let me just process that and break that down real quick, because I think we're both deep thinkers. When you say managers do the right thing and leaders do things well, what do you mean by what a manager's responsibility is?
A manager does things well. A manager is told what to do and he does it well. A leader is the person who knows what to do. And there's the difference.
Just real quickly before I let you go, because I don't know if I'm going to talk to you throughout the course of the playoffs. Where are you right now in terms of thinking about Super Bowl teams? Is Tampa in a position to potentially make a run again? Who do you like?
You know, I even though Green Bay's horrendous in the kicking game, their defense is bad against the run. I think Aaron Rodgers, this is his magical season. I do think he'll be there. I think if you look at the AFC, I think the Chiefs will be hard to beat there, only because of their defense has played better late. Now, the last 2 weeks hasn't, but I think they're going to be the hardest team to beat.
All right, Michael Lombardi, thanks as always for the time. Gridiron Genius, GM Shuffle, Daily Coach, you name it. Google it. You'll figure it out. You got a lot of stuff going on. I appreciate you joining me as always. Best of luck to you in the postseason.
Thank you, Carolyn.